Alright, what's up guys? I figured I'd do a video on my Velobuild 27.5 trail bike, and figured I'd do this because nobody really uploads videos about these bikes, and I guess this could be your weighing option if you're on the fence about getting one. So here's my build. I have a DB inline, I have I believe it's a sector fork in the front, just random bars, some XT wheels with a 1x setup on it, and yeah, so my setup I'm running right now, it's a little bit slack back if you couldn't tell, because I'm running a 184 by 44 shock in the back, which that is not to spec. That's a little bit smaller than spec, and then I'm running a 140 mil travel fork, and that's bigger than spec. So it recommends a 200 by 50 mil shock, and then it runs a 120 mil fork up in the front. So it's slack back quite a bit, but I figured it'd be fine because I want this more for like trail, and I didn't want it for just cross country, and so I wanted a little bit more travel out of it. So with this setup, I can tell you all the problems I ran into with it, which one problem was the headset. The headset runs a campy style integrated crown race, which is really weird. So it runs like a road bike headset, but what I did is I just went on eBay and I went and got one of these Chinese or Japanese headsets, or in fact you can buy one from their website Velobuild, and seems to be working all right. Another problem I ran into was this mounting setup. It's not quite right, so we had to like manufacture ourselves our own build. So we just got some DB inline mounting eyelets, and then we shaved them down a little bit so that they would work. And then another tiny problem was the axle. The axle runs a weird setup, but I found the threads that work for it, so that worked. Ooh, and also when you first get the frame, it's best to, well, I highly recommend taking apart the linkage, sanding down, or taking out the linkage, taking out the bearings, sanding the linkage, and then press fitting the bearings back in, because when they send it to you, it's loose. Like it was sloppy, and it was really bad. So I recommend taking apart the bike before you even put it together and tightening up the linkage. In fact, what I did was I just over tightened these, and it actually pulled most of the paint out of the mounting holes. So that worked well. And then nothing really else other than the headset and the mounting the eyelets for the shock. And then for riding, this bike has been a blast. I don't know what it is, the geometry of it, but this bike is so fun to ride, and it can take all the hard hits. As long as you've set up your shock and your fork right, it will take all the hard hits that any brand name bike will take. And so as you can see, I have a flat on mine, and I've been riding it for about 4 months pretty hard on some DH trails and some enduro trails. And then when I want to do some cross country, I just switch tires, and it works great because I just lock out the shock and it stiffens up, and it's really fast. So I figured I'd do this video because I don't really see any videos out there, and all my friends and everybody I know, the guys down at the bike shop, told me don't get a Chinese carbon bike, and I was on the fence about it because nobody wants to pay $1,500 for just a frame and then have this giant bill or whatever you can't pay for. You want a trail bike that's good and nice and carbon and light, but you don't have the money. And I'd say that the Chinese, if you know what you're doing with putting it together, or if you give it to a bike shop that knows what they're doing, and you make sure you get the specs that you want from the company, and you email them what you want, you should not have a problem. This bike, I run my bikes pretty hard, so I'd say that it's holding up, and it's just as good as any brand name bike. So if you're on the fence about buying one, I would definitely recommend it. If you need the bike like really quick, I wouldn't recommend it because it takes a while to build up. Just figuring out all those kinks and all that. And so, yeah, I love this bike and I'm super stoked. I think I'll probably get a 29er next. I don't know if I'll go full suspension or not, but I'll probably get a 29er next because I'm just so happy with the quality and the customer service with it. So the company I went through was Velobuild.com, and I would have gone through eBay, but I mean, I didn't really like going through eBay because eBay, they had a ton of different people making these frames. So I didn't want to do that. So I just went with a company, Velobuild, and I talked to the guy for about a good month before I even purchased the bike. So everything's worked out great, and I love the bike, and I highly recommend getting one. If you don't have the money to buy a brand name bike, definitely use this as one of your options. And yeah,